Hello, I'm John with Roadkill Incorporated. So today I want to talk about parts pairing and how it's literally going to be the death of repair and refurbishing. This has been increasingly concerning to me as a refurbisher. So first off, what is parts pairing? Well, basically it means a manufacturer, namely Apple, ties a screen to a logic board or any part to any other part so that if you replace the part with another working part, you get an error or you get reduced functionality. There is a cryptographic match or some other method of the device knowing exactly which part it needs to be connected to before it'll work. So the original part comes paired, and Apple is the only one that can wave its magic wand and pair another part. And they are the only ones who have the tools to do it. For example, a friend of mine just bought a new screen from Apple for $800. And once he physically connected it, he witnessed the pairing issues because it wasn't paired. And then he had to contact Apple via text message, and they walked him through pairing the new screen from the Apple end while he was in communication with them. And they let him do this only because he bought a screen directly from Apple and they had record of this purchase of his. So why would Apple do this? It's clearly about control. Apple claims it's about quality and authenticity, product integrity, physical safety, and they use words like calibration as if some highly technical, necessary thing is going on. But clearly, they just want to control everything about their devices and what parts get used. Used parts have been swappable on Apple devices for decades, so it's a control mechanism. It's not a technical necessity. For a great example of the problem, check out Hugh Jeffrey's video. He swapped two screens on two brand new MacBooks, and when he did that, he lost the True Tone feature. When he swapped boards, he got other issues like loss of Touch ID and things like that. This kind of stuff has been happening on MacBooks as of 2021, I believe. It's been happening for many more years with iPhones. And frankly, I don't understand how there is a repair world left for iPhones at all. It's just so bad. If you replace the battery, for example, on an iPhone, you get an inauthentic battery warning because the battery is not paired. And that's just the start of it. Anyway, my point here is not to give you a guide to which parts cause what defect. You can watch YouTube videos for that, but rather to give you a high level view of the dangers of parts pairing. So some people out there actually suggest parts pairing is not that big a deal. You know, who needs True Tone? And you might not need True Tone. Hey, whatever, we can live without Touch ID. Just enter your password, right? Well, that may be doable for an individual computer and an individual user. You replace a broken screen and give the computer to a friend and tell them, hey, it's fully functional. It just doesn't have True Tone. But that view is really wearing blinders, and it's not looking at the big picture and how damaging parts pairing will be to millions of devices and literally every device ultimately. If you zoom out, the bigger problem is when you sell a device like that, you have to sell it as defective. A defective device sells for significantly less. Now think of the entire used parts industry. In a world of parts pairing where Apple won't pair a used part or even a new part you didn't buy directly from them, then every part in the world, literally, can only be used to create a subpar defective device. That destroys all of the repair industry except the specific little bubble of the industry that Apple owns and has a monopoly on. And even that, a lot of the people taking advantage of that are forced by Apple to sign NDAs so they can't talk about their relationship with Apple. So, just a small example that I've witnessed in my business, I've had tons of activation locked MacBook Pros, and when a MacBook is activation locked, the board is effectively scrap. So I thought I'd sell the screens. They were perfectly good screens, but the majority came back because users out there weren't aware that by swapping screens, they'd lose features like True Tones. And they returned the screens assuming the problem was a screen. So, in a parts paired world where all parts can only be used to create defective devices, you can't even really sell used parts because they aren't worth anything and half of them are returned. So, in that world, how is the used parts industry supposed to survive? How are the millions of used and even new parts supposed to get used? It gets worse, though. Refurbishers and recyclers that do repairs and sell millions of used devices back into the world depend on being able to use the good parts from unrepairable machines to fix the repairable machines. Imagine if you have 100 laptops. Well, parts from 30 might replace the bad boards or bad screens in the 70 that are viable. That's how it's always worked, and that's how repair and refurbishing needs to work. But in a parts paired world, this will only produce defective laptops. And you can't legitimately sell defective laptops as good. So say goodbye to all the marketplaces where laptops are sold. And are refurbishers and recyclers going to be able to make a living selling those defective laptops? Of course not. Are recyclers going to bother doing anything but scrap any laptop that needs a repair and can't be made good? Of course not. So I know what you're thinking, but John, you're being an alarmist. You're missing the point. You can now buy these parts from Apple and they'll pair them for you. That's what right to repair is getting us, right? We can now buy parts from the manufacturer at a fair and reasonable price. Hooray! But no, it actually doesn't matter. When you're talking about 3 to 10-year-old devices that are worth $100 to $500, in other words, 95% of all the devices that exist in the universe, it's not viable to buy a $300 screen from Apple or even a $100 part like a new OEM battery. Even a fair and reasonably priced new OEM part absolutely tanks the viability of refurbishing a $300 perfectly good laptop, not to mention all the millions of $100 laptops out there. In my 15 years as a refurbisher, repairing tens of thousands of laptops, I have not bought a single OEM new part from Apple. Not a single one. If you cut the price of those parts in half, it still wouldn't matter. It just doesn't make sense for refurbishing. So new OEM parts are not some kind of universal solution. Used parts are the answer for used devices, and parts pairing rejects used and even new parts and completely destroys the used market. It completely destroys refurbishing, and it destroys the entire universe of repair except what Apple owns and controls. Now, parts pairing on Apple laptops is relatively new. It's come about as of, I think, 2021. So the fact is, the used market hasn't fully experienced the brunt of the damage yet. When I buy hundreds of laptops from recyclers, because recyclers get stuff that is 3 to 12 years old, maybe only a dozen or two are new enough that they're parts paired. But that will rapidly change as parts paired laptops become the predominant laptops dumped to recyclers in the used market. The used market that is literally responsible for every device that exists once it moves past the first owner. That will be a game over situation thanks to parts pairing. So time is of the essence, and another element bringing this to a head right now is right to repair, oddly enough. Right to repair bills are passing, and Apple is using right to repair to carve into law its parts paired repair monopoly. Unfortunately, right to repair bills are 100% vague when it comes to parts pairing. The bills state that Apple must allow a device to be made perfect again, but they don't mention used parts. So we have to assume these bills effectively are legally allowing Apple to maintain their parts pairing repair monopoly and that they will only pair new parts purchased directly from them. If you wonder why Apple is suddenly pro right to repair, well, it's not because they're giving in. It's because they're being handed their repair monopoly, and things like parts pairing and activation lock are so far effectively being given to them as concessions. And per these bills, Apple only needs to make parts pairing available for a certain number of years. So once that time is up, absolutely all older devices will have zero options, and it won't even be possible to resolve pairing issues with a new part from Apple. To make matters worse, take a look at this article. The Biden administration is pushing a national right to repair, and Apple is endorsing it. Why? Well, because almost certainly it would grant them a total monopoly on all Apple repair. And look at what Apple said. Apple believes that consumers and businesses would benefit from a national law that balances repairability with product integrity, usability, and physical safety. We believe that a uniform central repair law should do the following: maintain privacy, data, and device security features, which help thwart theft, ensure transparency for consumers about the type of parts used in a repair. That's clearly code for parts pairing. That's clearly code for activation lock. That's Apple saying they'll give us what right to repair demands in exchange for the things they want. Make no mistake, that's the secondary market being thrown under the bus. The maddening thing here is the article sounds so entirely positive to anyone who reads it, anyone who doesn't know what's really going on here. And that's 99.9% of people. We might just get a national right to repair bill that kills the entire secondary market, kills every device on the planet after its first use. And the irony is that people will actually celebrate thinking it's some kind of victory. Right to repair is a lot of good things, but unfortunately, it's also short sighted. It's consumer facing, and it ignores everything else. It concerns mainly the first user of a device. It makes the first user happy, and it makes the world that revolves around servicing the first user happy. But it doesn't look behind at the secondary market, at what happens to all the hundreds of millions of devices that are past the first user, the used market, the recyclers, the refurbishers. It's easy to forget all this because it's not as visible, but it's literally everything. It's literally every device that exists as it is passed on from its first user onward. Even without parts pairing, tens of millions of perfectly good devices are destroyed in warehouses, and we completely ignore it. But parts pairing is going to make the situation infinitely worse. Again, it's the survival of every device we're talking about here, not some small subset of the total, not just me whining and trying to save my refurbishing business. I can't stress that enough. If right to repair fails every device, then right to repair has failed. We have all failed. We may think we've been successful by simply ignoring what's in the rearview mirror, but if we do that, we're just fooling ourselves. So, yeah, not good. Right to repair is consumer facing, forward facing, and I've defined something I call right to reuse, which does look in the rearview mirror and take into account issues like parts pairing. Believe it or not, though, parts pairing is not the only issue that is threatening to destroy repair in every device out there. Check out my video on right to reuse if you're interested. Thanks for watching.